When you fell pregnant as a teenager, your mum gave you 3 ultimatums: marry him, have an abortion, or give the baby up for adoption. And so the messaging to that young Gammy was that she wasn't capable enough or strong enough to be an independent woman. So how on earth have you broken free of that conditioning, judgment, and expectations so you could live a life based on your terms and finally marry the man of your dreams in your 60s?
You're 17 and not married. That was a big deal back then. And so the message to me was that what other people think is more important than how you feel, more important than you. That judgment and those expectations have affected me throughout my life and kind of like added layers of insecurity and unworthiness, to who I was. All of that burden and all of that self-doubt is what led me into addiction, right? So, I spent all those years, probably started using like at the age of 15. You start with cigarettes and then you start with marijuana, and then I found heroin. It was like, that's it. That's the feeling that I want. That's the, and I lived in that for a really, really long time. And I have to admit that I had no idea of the responsibility. I think that's really what her intent was, but what it came out as, what will people think? What will people think of us? You're not married, and back in the day for a family like ours, we were considered middle class. Her place in our community was important to her and my father. So, my mother was a social worker, my father was a doctor, come on now.
Mm-hmm. And so was it that weight of the reality, plus the expectations of the family, plus the fact that you ended up in this marriage that maybe you didn't want, led you to then seeking external sources to numb yourself? And
absolutely. My really, really deep and heavy addiction, like I'm using drugs, all this time, but the really, really deep addiction didn't start until really when my mother passed. So Jada would have been about 12 or 13 years old. Because once my mother passed, I didn't have anybody to answer to, kinda, you know what I mean? Like, I still was hiding that from my mother, So I was a functioning addict. I went to work every day. I graduated from nursing school, top of my class, magna cum laude, all while I was using drugs. I got married twice, but that's also when my mother passed, my second marriage ended, and, things just started going downhill.
So talk to me about that, if you don't mind, because anybody listening right now that feels stuck, that feels like they've got nowhere to go, that feels like maybe their life is written for them, and then you end up down that spiral, because once it's like you kind of start, it really is hard to get out.
It is extremely hard to get out of. And, at the end of the day, I just went through it until you get sick and tired of being sick and tired of yourself. Like, everybody has to find their own bottom. Once I found this 12-step program, because that's how I got clean. That's not how everybody gets clean, but that's how I got clean. I followed my sister into the rooms, but even still, it took me 6 years of like a revolving door going in and out of recovery. Not even recovery, just in and out of the rooms. Staying clean for a little while and then relapsing, until you just hit rock bottom. You hit rock bottom, and you have to, and actually when I got clean for real, it wasn't really for me. It was for Jada. And also I had found a relationship again. That was my third husband. And I didn't want to lose I didn't want to lose that relationship, and I felt like I had to be clean in order to stay in it. So I did it for a man and for Jada, right? Until once you're in there, then you realize you got to do it for you. It's got to be for you. It can't be for somebody else, you know? And that's something that nobody can figure out for you, you know, because everybody's journey is different. Everybody's journey is different.
You have a quote that says, "I didn't think I was anything without a man."
Yes, I did not. I didn't. You know, and I think a lot of women, you know, feel that way still, and definitely back then. Mm-hmm. It was about husband, family, not focused on career. That wasn't that important for women, you know, back when I was coming up.
Was it that mindset that made you believe, or I don't know if it's made you believe, but allowed you to believe that an abusive relationship was okay to be in?
You know what? I don't know where the hell that came from, because that was not my experience with my parents. I don't know where that came from.
Because I heard an interview with you where you said, when he hit me, I thought that meant he loved me.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't care, he just would have walked away.
Right. And I actually tried to convince one of my girlfriends of the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and she was like, "What? That's ridiculous." So I don't know where that came from for me. I really don't.
If you don't mind taking me back to that time. So you've got a young child. He's very abusive to you. I mean, he pushed you over a balcony.
Yeah, but you know what? See, here I go making excuses. I don't want to make him out to be this devil of a man, because he actually wasn't. He was an addict. And to be honest, he warned me about that. He knew it. He knew he was. Because you have to remember too, back then, we didn't have the information about addiction that we have now, right? Mm-hmm. But he knew he was an addict, and that there was really no hope for our relationship. He actually was happy about the pregnancy, and I was, but he knew that he could not be a father. He knew that, but I didn't want to terminate the pregnancy, you know? So he kind of did that for me. And when he pushed me over the balcony, he was drunk, and we weren't fighting, you know what I mean? So it was an accident. He was drunk, you know, we were all out. I remember where we were. We were over my girlfriend's house, and, you know, it was a porch balcony.
Do you mind if I ask you, because I've heard you tell this story, and every time you like, here I go again making excuses.
Excuses, yeah.
How are you, even
because he
now,
also had punched me in the eye. I had a black eye one time. He was drunk. He was a mean drunk. And he tried to warn me that he was not the person for me, the person that I wanted him to be, and that I should leave him alone. And, you know, he, I think, had a lot of demons, of his own demons. I know that he did. And my mother saw it the first time she ever met him. She saw it in his eyes. And she did not support the relationship from day one. But again, you know, I think it was more about my own rebelliousness against my parents and what they wanted from me and their expectations for me, what everybody else thought. You know, I just was rejecting all of it.
So he held up the danger sign and you chose to ignore it.
Right.
And you think that that's part of it because you already knew it. He knew it and you still went into the relationship.
Exactly.
How did you then eventually realize that actually, hang on, this abuse does not equal love?
Probably the last time he, you know, we had a fight, and the time that I had to run out of the house. That was that was the last straw. I wasn't going to live like that.
And you ran out of the house because you thought your life was at risk?
Yeah. We were in the house, and I think that we were actually, I'm trying to remember if we were separated at the time, because my parents, well, our parents, actually, his parents and my parents were kind of like supporting us. We had an apartment, and, you know, Rob was, you know, trying to work. I stayed home with Jada for a year. And that was an agreement that my mother and I had. And I was at my mother's house, and he came there. I can't even remember what the argument was about, but he punched me in the stomach. He pushed me down on the bed, and he punched me in the stomach. And Jada was in another room on the floor. I had placed her on the floor. And I said, oh my God, we left Jada, you know, in the den. And he went, so it was, the bedroom was here and the den was across the hall, the den, my father's office. So he ran to get Jada, because I knew he wasn't gonna hurt. Jada was like, maybe 6 months old, you know, just old enough to like sit up, maybe 10. And so he ran over to the den to get her, and I made a mad dash out of the house and down the steps and across the street. Like, I just ran screaming and banging on the door, and they came and opened the door, because I had never seen him, the level of anger that he had. And I was scared, and I was home by myself. So the neighbors called the police, and my parents actually came. They had been out for the afternoon, and they kind of drove up to all of that. The police being there at their home, and me in tears, you know, holding Jada and the neighbors. It was just like a mess. We just were dysfunctional, you know? We were teenagers, and he was a teenage addict, you know? It was a disaster waiting to happen, and it happened. And so I just didn't, you know, you're young and you just don't see it that way. Had I been older and more experienced, more knowledgeable about abusive relationships, I probably would not have stayed, even through that. Like, it would have been like, you hear people say, if they hit you once, that's enough. Once is too many. I know that now. I just didn't know it then. You know, I'd never seen that. That didn't happen in my family. So I just didn't understand abuse.
So if you could go back and speak to that younger self of yours, what would you say to her?
I would say, girl, please, he's not worth it. Why are you doing this? Why are you even doing this? To rebel against your mother? So you're gonna hurt yourself rebelling against your mother, because that's what you're doing. That's what this is all about. It's all about you rebelling against your mother. That's it. Figure that out. And he don't have nothing to do with it. Really. He's your tool.
Wow. He's your tool. That really hit me. So, thank you for sharing all of this, by the way. I think that your experience, everything in hindsight, is very powerful for somebody listening right now, that I don't want them to get to my age in my 40s, or, you know, you in your 70s, to have to realize all of this sort of thing. And so thinking through what led you there, what had to transpire in order for you to be able to get out of that and then become the freaking badass that you are today. So do you mind taking me then through your addiction? So, you know, you're in this turbulent relationship, you're addicted to heroin, but you're very functional, like you said. But just for clarity, you're like over 30 years sober now?
Yes.
That's amazing.
33
Dude, that's
33
freaking
years.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So then take me back. Did you ever think that this would be possible, that you'd be sitting here today, sober, being able to talk?
No. Once you find yourself so deep in addiction, and once it becomes, because what happens is the drugs stop working, right? The feeling that actually you looked forward to, it doesn't work for you anymore. It doesn't relieve. It doesn't relieve your pain. It doesn't relieve the emptiness. And you realize that it's the cause. And so that rock bottom, like I said, is different for everybody. And I tell this story all the time too. I remember Jada was away at college and she called me, and I was very tearful and crying. I had broken up with my boyfriend at the time, who, by the way, is now my fourth husband. We had broken up, and I was, just kind of distraught and tearful and feeling sorry for myself. And Jada was like, "Mom, it doesn't have anything to do with Rodney. It doesn't have anything to do with anybody else but you. And once you get yourself together, then all the pieces will come together." And I heard her. I heard her. I heard what she was telling me. I had already been exposed to the rooms of the 12-step program. So I had already started that revolving door. I had been to treatment, and you hear some people say that, they went to treatment over and over and over again. That was not part of my story. I went to treatment one time and I heard them. I heard what they were telling me and I knew what I had to do, but I had to make the decision. But that message from Jada that night was very impactful, and I think that was kind of like the turning point for me, because I knew she was right. It didn't have anything to do with Rodney or anybody else. Me thinking I needed a man. No, you don't need nobody, but you need to get your shit together. Get your life together and stop this madness. It doesn't even work anymore. It's not even serving its purpose anymore.
Do you think the difference there, that you heard the message, is the fact that you hit rock bottom? Because I can imagine up to that point, if anyone ever was going to pinpoint it, you would probably deny it, ignore it, pretend it wasn't a problem. But that moment where someone's giving you a piece of advice and it actually sticks, is it the rock bottom that allowed that to stick? Yeah,
but you have to get to that moment with Rodney, that breakup. And then there was another time, because it wasn't that exact moment either. I have to admit that. It wasn't that exact moment, but it was a turning point because someone else came into my life after that. And the real rock bottom for me was I found myself in my basement by myself, getting high. Couldn't find a vein, but injected it anyway, knowing that it wasn't any good, right? Knowing that the drugs weren't any good. It wasn't even really heroin. It was probably quinine or something. That was the rock bottom for me. And that probably was about another year or two after that conversation with Jada.
We all know how important it is to be eating healthy, so you can actually set yourself up for kick-ass energy and badass confidence. ButcherBox makes it so easy to eat better with the best meats and seafood on the planet. ButcherBox is a premium meat subscription service that delivers high-quality meats and seafood directly to your door. I'm literally obsessed with them, guys, and I eat their product every single day. So sign up for ButcherBox today by going to butcherbox.com/ NYBBS and use coupon code NYBBS, which is Nurture Your Bad Bitch Soul, at checkout, and you can enjoy the choice of bone-in chicken thighs, top sirloin, or salmon for absolutely free in every single box for an entire year. Plus, you get $20 off. Again, that's butcherbox.com/NYBBS and use the code NYBBS during checkout. Do you think it becomes, like, the analogy that I always have in my head with things like this is those drops of water that hit a stone and eventually the stone changes its shape?
Yeah.
So thinking about Jada says this, Rodney leaves you, you're in the basement, and so all these accumulation of this dripping effect became the thing that made you.
It's the process. You know, it's the journey. And, you know, when you're talking about addiction, everybody's journey is different. You have people that go to treatment and come out and they get clean, right? That's it. You know, my sister got clean. She never even went into treatment. She never even went into treatment. She did, she went to therapy and she found the 12-step program. And she never relapsed after that. But my journey was not that. I relapsed over and over and over again. And I can remember it was a Saturday. It was a Saturday afternoon, and it was a Saturday morning meeting that happened in a church. And I stood up, and I remember the meeting that day was small. It was very intimate. It wasn't a lot of people there. I remember who was chairing the meeting and everything. And I stood up and got my 90-day keychain. 90 days. Yeah, so that's 3 months. And it was like, wow, I am really honestly doing this. And it was like a light bulb went off and like a relief, like a weight off of my shoulders that day. And it was just different because I surrendered. I had surrendered to the fact that I was an addict and I had to do it this way. I couldn't rewrite the 12 steps. I couldn't rewrite the traditions. I had to let go and let God and let somebody else help me through this process. And that meant letting go means letting go of everything, turning your will over to the power of God, letting go of all your friends, like getting rid of the phone numbers, your old phone numbers, and collecting new phone numbers, letting people help you. You know, you can't associate with people that are using. You can't do that. You know, and before I always had them like in the back of my mind. So if I change my mind, I know who I can call. But if you disconnect yourself from all of that, you know, and then I just started following directions. People always knew where I was. You know, I can remember being at work and calling my sponsor and saying, I'm not feeling good. I feel like I just want to use. And she was like, well, what are you doing right now? I said, well, I'm at work.
And you're a nurse for people who don't know.
Yeah, I'm at work and, you know, and she said, well, do what's in front of you to do right now. And then when 5 o'clock comes, meet me at such and such a place. I'll meet you there. You know what I mean? And it was that kind of thing. It was that kind of thing of really letting people know where I was, always staying connected with somebody, like when things like that, when those feelings come about, talk to somebody, call somebody. That's what the program is about. You know, one addict helping another. And I started doing those things. And even today, what that did was kind of take away my spontaneity, and it didn't give me an opportunity to sneak off because somebody always knew where I was. But they always knew where I was because I told them. I stayed connected with people. Whereas before, I was always sneaking off and, you know, I'm here, I'm there, I'm doing this, I'm, you know, oh no, I'm all right. You know what I mean? Just being sneaky about my life. And that's how I was able to keep using. Because it's not really what I wanted. I didn't really want to stop. You know, in the back of my mind, I always thought that, oh, I can go back to just using on the weekends. And, you know, that shit doesn't work.
So really, you really changed your habits as well to make sure that you wouldn't end up going back.
You have to change your life. You have to change everything about yourself. And the change starts on the inside. You know, it's an inside out job. So let me change that because I think that's not correct. The change actually does start on the outside until it moves into the inside. Outside has to change. All the things, how you're living, you know. Like I used to come to the meetings like all dressed up and cute, you know. I had more male friends in the meetings than I did women because, you know, I'm just trying to be cute. I'm not trying to really be in there to do the work, right? Once you try to get in there and then you connect with the other women because they gonna peep your shit. Yeah, they know who you are because they've been that too. So
that's why you were hiding from them in the first place,
right.
And you gravitated towards the men because
exactly.
you knew that.
Exactly. So then the longer that you're in there and the longer that you start relating, you stop identifying your way out. Because I did that for a long time too. Oh no, I can't go in this meeting because I'm a nurse. I can't let people see me in there. What? Girl, you are not that important. Are you trying to save your life or save face? Mm-hmm. Which is more important?
I love hard questions like that because it doesn't leave you anywhere to go. It's like you have to actually answer it. It's binary. Which one?
Which one? Which one? Talking about you don't want to be seen in the meeting. What?
I really want to dive into the fact that you gave yourself over. This is so powerful because anyone listening right now, whether you've been addicted to drugs or not, the idea of being stuck, being in a place that doesn't serve you, being in a place where you look around, you're like, this isn't the life that I dreamt of or wanted, and then making that change. That's what I think universally, almost every woman I've ever met has embraced or faced something like that. Expectations, judgment, and everything that you've been talking about. And I love that you said it actually started outside first.
Yeah.
Because I understand you saying I had to strip away the things that weren't allowing me to do the internal work.
Yeah.
So by changing your habits, by changing the people you were with, by changing the way you were showing up, then
and being honest. You know, and people always say being honest with yourself. But what I realized was that I don't even think I really understood what honesty was, if that makes any sense. But I think it was me being able to share as honestly as I could at the time so that the people there could then, you know, kind of explain to me what was going on with me because they had been through it. So they could explain to me that that's not really what was going on. You know, I'm gonna give you an example. Like I'm in the meeting and, you know, women are talking about how they were tricking, you know, and I was like, oh, I never did that.
Tricking meaning?
Like using sex
and
using their bodies. in their addiction to get drugs, whether they were standing on the corner or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I never did that. I never did that. And they were like, oh, really? You never did that? You never had sex with anybody to get drugs? You never had sex when you didn't really want to? What you really wanted was the drugs, but you had sex. That's tricking. That's tricking. But I never looked at it that way because he was my boyfriend. But your goal at the time was that you knew he had it. So it's that kind of stuff that I didn't even realize. I'm being dishonest with myself. And I needed the experience of one addict to another explaining to me what is going on in your own life, because you don't even really know.
You had labeled it all as normal.
Yeah, or I just labeled it as like, I'm having sex with my boyfriend. What are you talking about? No, that's not really what you were doing.
How much did that teach you the power of the story you tell yourself?
How we lie to ourselves. That's what it taught me. How many years I was lying to myself about what was really going on in my life. And it's not purposeful. Sometimes I'm lying purposely and I know it, but sometimes I just didn't even understand what was happening, because your mind is all muddled. Your mind is all muddled and dysfunctional because you're about the getting and the using. That's it. That's really what your life has been about. I don't even know how I survived that shit.
Well, I've heard you say you didn't even expect yourself to last, to live until you were 70. So for you to be able to crushing weights in the gym, homie, in your 70s, which of course we're going to get to.
Right.
But now looking back, because everything seems clearer in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
It's like when you're in the mess, you don't actually notice. It's like, what is it?
You don't see it.
You don't see the tree amongst the forest or whatever the phrase is. What other lies do you think that you were telling yourself that in hindsight now, if someone's listening, that maybe you could remove the blinders from their eyes?
Oh, the damage that you are doing to the people around you. Not just yourself. Because addiction is such a self-centered disease that's all you're really thinking about. You're just thinking about yourself. And I tried to think about Jada. I tried to be conscious of what I was doing and how I was doing it, how I was getting high and trying to hide it from her, but I couldn't. Just the years that I was in denial of neglect as a parent.
How did you process that, and how does that feel?
The guilt never really is never really relieved, I can remember the first couple of years clean and being in the rooms and just talking about it constantly. Like every time I raised my hand, it just seemed like I was trying to talk about the guilt that I felt for my daughter, to the point where people were like, oh, the only way to relieve that is to openly and honestly acknowledge and be accountable for that behavior and not being there as a parent and apologizing for that. And then not repeating the same behavior over again. Because apologizing and then continuing the same behavior doesn't mean a thing. And so that's what I have focused on in the past and continue to focus on is just being a better me. And that's how you heal. Because you can't change it. You can't change the damage that was done. You know, all you can do is try to be better and trying to be there for them now, you know, in whatever way that she needs me, because she's an adult now. So her need for me is different.
I just want to say I think that's extremely brave and inspiring. And I really mean that because there's no one in the world out there, anyone listening to this, that hasn't made a mistake.
Right.
Period. Now, there's extremes, of course, but regardless, if you've made a mistake and you are wrong, that guilt, right? Because look, we sometimes feel guilty for things we should never feel guilty about.
Right.
It's just our conditioning. Then there's other things that we feel guilty about because we've actually shown up and done something that wasn't kind, nice, or, you know, right. When you feel that, how do you respond? A lot of people, and I get it, but it's an ego thing. It's a protective mechanism to pretend it either didn't happen, to try and convince the other person it wasn't that bad, or to apologize and pretend and just move on. You didn't do any of those. Those are the easy things. And I think a lot of us, whether we want to admit it or not, that's what we do to protect our own emotions, because to think or tell ourselves we're a bad mother, we've hurt our child, sometimes is so painful that we don't want to feel it. So that's why I think you're brave. You're brave for feeling it. You're brave for vocalizing it, not pretending that it didn't happen, and then saying, I now am going to show up every day to try and make up for my mistake.
Right.
That is so damn inspiring because, again, everyone's going to make a mistake. How do you handle it? And I think what you're doing also is it allows you to let go of the shame.
Yeah.
If I vocalize and I'm able to say, this was on me, I screwed up, but I'm going to do differently, I can actually let go of that shame that I'm carrying in the darkness at night when I'm by myself and I hope no one sees. I can now let that go.
Yeah. And I have to say, too, that it has not been an easy journey for Jada and I. Mm-hmm. And I think we tried to make that clear on Red Table Talk. And it's still a journey for us. It's probably more challenging for me because I actually think that there have been times when Jada has been in a bit of denial or trying to, and I don't know whether it's her way of trying to relieve my guilt by maybe downplaying it a little bit by saying, oh, but you weren't as bad as you think you were. And what I went through, you know, made me the person that I am. And all of that is true. All of that is true. Everything, our life experiences, the good and the bad, help make you who you are as a human being. But geez, people always say, you know, I wouldn't do anything differently. You know, it was part of God's plan. Okay, but if you ask me that, I'm not going to say I would do it all over again. I think that I could have helped Jada be a strong person, you know, without going through addiction. That's what I would want. That's what I would want. I would not want that for myself. I would want to find a different way to be the Adrienne that I am. I would want a different way to make Jada be the Jada that she was without having gone through that experience. You know, I would have wanted to be a better mother. That's hard. But you know what gives me so much joy? So much joy is watching her with her children. Can I tell you, she is one of the best mothers. And you see it in the relationship that she has with her children. They love her so dearly. They love her so dearly, and they connected with her, and she is so connected to them, so in tuned to who they are as human beings. And that's what I would have wished for her. Because I think children deserve that. Children deserve that, you know? And I always wonder, like, how can she be this human being? How can she have this love for her children when she didn't receive it that way? But oftentimes, when you don't get what you need, then you know how to give it to someone else. Because you know what you missed.
My mom was brought up in a convent with nuns, and so she was never hugged. And so she said, when I have kids, I'm going to show them so much love and I'm going to hug them because I never have it. But it's interesting because they did this study, I think it was actually with an alcoholic father, and he had the 2 children, and they were twins, so like genetically they're exactly. One became an alcoholic and the other one never touched alcohol. And they asked the alcoholic, why did you end up drinking? It's like, because my father was an alcoholic. They asked the other child who never touched a drop of alcohol why they never touched a drop of alcohol. And he said, because my father was an alcoholic. And so thinking about how the same parent with 2 different children can go in these different directions. And to your point, that's probably what happened with Jada. And then she was like, okay, I never got this from my mom. But what I want to know is, how have you forgiven yourself? You were so beautifully honest about everything. And like I said, most people would shy away, not pretend, like they would pretend it wasn't as bad, and to make themselves feel better and then to make the world appreciate them. But you've been so wonderfully honest. And I think that if ever there was a mistake to be made, I really hope people handle it the way that you're handling it. But how have you been able to forgive yourself? Because I think it's so important to let go. I think it's important to forgive yourself and not hold on to that. So have you forgiven yourself?
I guess I've forgiven myself to a certain extent, but I think I just kind of put it to the side because, like you said, or like I said before, there's nothing that I can do about it. I can't change what happened in the past. I can only move forward and try to be better now. And so it's a constant growing and learning process. And that never stops. That never changes. And I think that's what I focus on. And I just try to live in a space of gratitude. And that keeps me in the here and now and moving forward.
I think that's so powerful though. And whether you call it forgiveness or not, the fact that you like, look, there's nothing I can do about it, because other people would beat themselves up day after day for the rest of their lives. It doesn't serve you. You've got to, like, yes, that happened. Acknowledge it. But if you hold on to it, if you stare at that every day, that can be so toxic.
It'll beat you down, right.
To never be able to change and grow. And one of the most impressive things about you is your ability to change. Is your ability to say, okay, I was there, it didn't serve me, and now I'm here. So thinking even to your marriages, right? You've had 4 marriages, and so now on your 4th one, it's like, okay, this is the love of my life. But to go through it, to not stay in a marriage that doesn't serve you is super freaking powerful, because a lot of women would stay in a marriage even unhappy. So the fact that you didn't do that. Then to go, in all honesty, after the 3rd one, it's like, well, I love that you still believe in love. I love that you still like, no, this is what I actually want in life. And I'm still going to keep moving forward until I get it. That is so powerful. Because again, we judge ourselves. We use our past as a explanation of how we see ourselves today. And do you choose to see your past as something that's shameful, bad, that you have to hide from, that you can never like let see the light of day? Or do you actually use that as the compass for you to pivot? And it feels like you're using that as the compass to pivot when you recognize something doesn't resonate or is right for you.
I can remember that when I told Jada that I was getting married again, she's like, oh my God. It's like, why? And I said, well, you know, Rodney's never been married before, and he wants to get married. She said, why are you getting married? Why are you getting married? I'm not talking about Rodney. I'm talking about you.
That was a good explanation of why he wanted to get married.
And I said, you know what? I love him, and I actually enjoy being married. I enjoy being married. I enjoy the partnership of it, you know? And I think that we can have a good marriage. I think this is what I've been waiting for. And Rodney and I, we talk about everything and anything, and I had never had that before. So I think the friendship that we had, and we had been in each other's lives before, and we had come back different people. We had grown from where we were from all those years past. And we kind of had the same vision for the relationship. We had the same, like you were talking about independence, we had the same kind of independence. Like, we weren't reliant on one another for our own happiness. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Where I think that I was relying and expecting my happiness to come from the other person. But you're responsible for your own happiness. That's not his job, or that's not your partner's job. They can enhance it, but it's not their job to make you happy. And so I just felt like we had had some deeper conversations, and we were both wiser, and I didn't have that in the other relationships, you know? So that I just wasn't a concern.
I love how you just broke that down, where it's like you recognize where you went wrong in the past and the things that you didn't have, and that's why it resulted in, you know, an unhealthy relationship or just not a relationship that worked. And so then identifying, oh, but now I've got the tools. Now it's like almost building a house, right? Where it's like you're in the woods and all you've got is like a stick, and you're like, how can I build a house with a stick? But now you have the hammer, you have the saw, you have the nails. So now you can actually build a better life, if you will.
And that's actually what happened with the third marriage. You know, I was in the program, you know, I was living my life and using those tools that I learned in the program to grow and expand and be better. And the growth and the change that comes with using all of those tools and trying to be a better person and trying to figure out who I was, that probably, even though that marriage lasted for 20 years or more, it just got to the point where, you know, one person is growing and the other person is not. And one person is doing the work that they need to do for themselves, and it just doesn't match. It doesn't fit anymore with that, with your partner. I don't even think that my husband at the time understood that. You know, I think that he thought that we had a good enough relationship because we had been together so long, and that the emotion was still there, but I was not being loved the way I needed to be loved. And I don't think he realized that he deserved to be loved better. Mm-hmm. Right? And so, you know, thankfully we were able to end the relationship amicably, you know, and I've done that with all of my relationships. It wasn't, knock down, drag out, none of that, you know. So, but it was time to move on. I felt like I had more years behind me than I did left in front of me, and I just needed to be happy. My sister had passed. I had a cousin who was younger than me who passed. Both of them passed from different types of cancer, and I was like, oh my God, I can't. I just got to be happy, and I'm not happy.
There's so much beauty in that story, and I really mean it. And the reason why I say beauty is because so many people say they're not happy.
And they stay anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the idea of staying anyway and living the rest of your life without fulfillment, it is the reason, Gammy, I do this show. It is precisely that. Whether you're 20 years old or whether you're 70, living a life for somebody else is not okay. Just saying when someone asks, how are you? And you say, fine.
Yeah.
Okay, that's not okay with me. You should freaking love your life. Of course, there's always going to be problems, but you should be so on fire for your life's journey. And if you're not, freaking make a change.
Yeah. But you know, I have to give some people grace too, because I understand that for women, a lot of women don't feel like, or don't know how they're going to make it on their own, because they maybe never been on their own before. You know, they've been in marriage for all this time and they've been dependent on that income or whatever the situation may be. And that's one thing that I have to thank the gods and my parents, that they raised us to always be productive members of society, and to be able to not only take care of yourself and your family, but to be productive in your community. Like what are you giving back to the community? And so I was always, as a nurse, I was always able to, you know, take care of myself. So I didn't have those worries about whether I could make it on my own. I've always been able to support myself.
If you wake up every morning craving that first cup of coffee, but also actually dreading the bloating, the jitters, and the crashes that come with it, you're so not alone, especially for us women. But let's face it, what's the alternative? Zombieing through our morning half awake? Now, there's finally a coffee replacement actually designed for women from Peak called Nandaka. Every cup of Nandaka nourishes you and uplifts your energy instead of making you feel anxious and jittery. Nandaka is expertly formulated with the highest quality and purest ingredients to activate your metabolism, provide sustained energy, and balance your hormones. Kick your coffee habit and enjoy the endless wellness benefits from Nandaka from Peak. Now, for a limited time, you get 15% off, plus a free starter kit and a bottle of Propolis throat spray when you shop the link you see on the screen, or you can find it in the show notes. That's 15% off plus a free starter kit. Transform your mornings with Peak. Yeah, look, I have tremendous compassion for that sort of situation. And I think for me, it's more about looking at your life and not settling. If you decide, look, okay, where am I financially? Maybe I've been a stay-at-home wife for a long time. I'm not making my own money. Do I leave? I get that. Like, it isn't going to be easy. But then look at your life, decide whether it's right for you, decide whether you want to leave or not, but then at least be conscious of it. I think that's the thing. When I hear a woman saying, I can't, it really breaks my heart, because the thing is that you just choose not to. That I can respect. But the idea of thinking that you can't is you're holding yourself back.
Yes.
And how many women think that they can't? They can't speak up. They can't go against expectations. They can't disappoint. And because of that can't, Gammy, we end up living a life that doesn't freaking serve us.
Yes.
And so when I say to you being able to look at your life and say, does this serve me? Yes or no? No. Cool. All the mess that comes with making a change, I'm still going to do it. Is incredibly inspiring.
Yeah.
All the people that say, I'm too old, you're incredibly inspiring.
Let me see, this last marriage, I was like in my late 50s and I left. Yeah.
So in your late 50s, it's your third marriage. And so I can see another world where you don't make that pivot. You don't make that change. And then the happy Gammy that sits here today won't exist. And so that's where it's like, my audience probably hates me by now, but I give this example. But there was a movie called Sliding Doors. Did you ever see it?
No.
It's with Gwyneth Paltrow. And it basically is, she's running to make the train in England, the tube. And so she's running, and there's one scene where the train doors close, and she doesn't make it. And so she's like, oh, damn. Then they show the storyline. But then they cut to a scene where she's running for the same train, and she makes it. And her path goes on a totally different trajectory. I think of those closing doors as choices, the decisions we make in our lives. Do we make the choice or do we not make the choice? That will lead you on two very different paths in your life. So when I think about the choices you've made, whether easy, messy, heartbreaking, guilt, all these things, you still make the choice every day.
Right.
And if that's like the gift that anyone can get from you and your lessons and everything you've taught us today, could you imagine the amount of lives that could be changed where women are living happy? I'm not saying successful, because success can be anything, but actually happy in the journey that you're on, and you don't succumb to the life you feel like you have to.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And so you saying, I divorced him in my 50s, and now also let's just talk about your age, right? The fact that you never said I'm too old is, I think, precisely what's allowed you to evolve.
Right. Yeah, turning 70 was something. That was something for me, emotionally and physically. And it doesn't hit you right away. But for some reason, I started seeing the change in my body more. It's probably been coming on for a while. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't acknowledge it or really see it. I still have a lot of energy. So I get up in the morning, like even this morning when I got up, I was like, oh, they're going to be here at 8:30. I don't really have time to work out. But I was like, nope, yes, you do. Yeah, go get on that bike, 20 minutes, and I got on the bike. I've been consistent with it daily now since February. And now we're into April, because I recently had a hip replacement. And that was not fun, but I thought the results were gonna be a little different. And so I've had to work really hard to get back to where I feel like I wanna be. And even still, I'm not 100%, and I think I just won't ever have the flexibility that I had before. And even then, it wasn't all that great. But so I find myself pushing myself harder because I took that time off to heal. And then when I came back and started working out again, it was like, oh, well, I'm not going to work out with weights that much anymore. I'm going to take it easy. I'm just going to do yoga and Pilates and, those things but my body is not used to that. My body is used to weightlifting. And then so what I saw was that my body was getting soft. That softness was coming into my arms, and, everybody talks about my abs. Shit, that picture, y'all stop. That picture was back when I was 65 years old. I'm 70.
I love how that's like, I was 65. You know how many people wish they had those abs in their 20s? But my point, everything that you're saying though, is there's, again, a choice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, your arms are getting soft. Most people go, well, I'm in my 70s. It doesn't matter. But you're like, no. I'm going to go in the gym. I'm going to freaking pick up that weight.
Yeah.
Like that idea, that mentality is such a strong way to cultivate your mind into longevity. Like it's like the fact, if you give up on small things, how does that echo through your life?
Right.
If you say, well, it doesn't matter. I'm 60, I'm 70. Think about how that transitions over time, over the years.
Absolutely.
And one of the biggest signs, I think, of like declining into death is like broken hip. It's like they did this whole study on like the people that live till they're over 100, like the blue zones. And a lot of the places where they had the flexibility in their hips. And it was because they correlated when someone trips as you get older.
Right.
And if you break a hip, that's one of the biggest signs that you're going to rapidly decline in health. So now that's a stat. That's a fact.
Yes.
Gammy, you didn't do that. You have a hip replacement and you're like, all right, I'm going to do yoga. I'm going to do this, right? It's a mentality thing.
Yes, it is.
And that's what I really want to echo, because if we just flip our mentality, doesn't matter how old you are, by flipping that mentality, can you imagine what becomes possible? And you're like that shining light of what's possible, because again, anyone listening, if you got a hip replacement in your 70s, go to the gym.
Yeah. But I'm also an exercise junkie. I mean, I just really love it. It just makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. It makes me feel good, and it's part of my life. So to give it up, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that.
But to be the woman that was injecting drugs that she knew was bad into her
isn't that
body that
crazy?
didn't have a vein, to the woman who's sitting here today saying that I go to the gym in my 70s because I don't feel good if I don't. I need people to hear this message, Gammy. I really do. Because that flip in ideas can change your life. It's not going to be easy. I never want to pretend it is. Your life and your transitions have been so difficult. And you're still on your journey. You've been very open and transparent about that. You don't have the perfect life. You're still on that journey of improvement. And I'd love to actually touch on regrets, because regrets all become in hindsight. And the regrets are also the thing that I think that holds people back. From making a change.
Yeah. Don't you can't get stuck in that. You know, you just can't get stuck in it. And I don't know what else to say about that. Like,
how do you not then get stuck in the regret? What do you actually do? Like, if I was to crawl into your mind of maybe a spiraling regret that you have, how do you unspiral it?
I think a lot of that has to do too with just how I was raised. That gives me that like foundation, you know, and that fortitude and that persistence and tenaciousness that I just will not let go. You know, I just won't stop, you know, for something that is like just, it's like niggling in my brain, you know what I mean? So it's like that way with, you know, with exercise, and even little things. Like, I notice things about me, like if I can't figure out something, you know, I'll just keep at it until, like, if it's something needs to be fixed around the house or something and Rodney's not there, I will just keep, because I know it's a little thing. I know it's a little button somewhere, and I bet you is it that? No, I'm just going, I may fool with it for an hour or more, you know, come back to it the next day, but I'm gonna figure out what it is, because it's little and I know it's right there, you know. So it's that kind of just persistence and not wanting to give up. And I think too, you know how people say, make sure that you have positive people around you in your circle. Like, I try to make sure that there is positivity around me. Like, I saw Iyanla did a post the other day, Iyanla Van Zandt, whom I love, and she was talking about energy, you know, and your own energy kind of leaves you open to what you're bringing into your life. I can't remember her exact words, but if you're vibrating up here, then the people around you, the people and the things that come into your life is going to be high energy. But if you're down here in negative land, then that's what you're going to create. That's what you're going to draw to you. And so, you know, I try to fill my space and my mind and with positive things, even with paying attention to what you're watching on television. And, you know, so some of the stuff that I watched years ago that I was so into, without naming some of the reality shows that are on TV, like, I had to cut all of that out. Like, I can remember years ago going to work, and at lunchtime we would all gather to watch the soaps, right? The Young and the Restless. Like, that was our lunchtime. We would all go in the lunchroom. Oh, The Young and the Restless is coming on, you know. And I was mad if I couldn't get there by 12:30. But I had to stop watching all of that negativity. I had to stop watching all of that foolishness. It will bring you down. You'll get caught up in all of that. So positivity, energetically, is important, you know, to just keep, and of course for me, I got it on my necklace, just living a life of gratitude. Like, gratitude is so important. I'm grateful to be here today. I'm grateful for my life. So I'm going to live my life accordingly. So that what you see, hopefully, is some gratitude.
I love that you have it around your neck to remind you. That's why I have the Wonder Woman necklace, because it always reminds me that I can be strong like Wonder Woman, like it's that reflection thing. And then the gratitude piece is super important, the positivity, because I believe negativity carries way more weight than positivity. So imagine you've got negative things all around you. And I totally hear what you're saying about the reality TV shows. I was the same, and I would watch them, and my husband would come and he's like, I've got a headache. He's like, how are you watching this stuff? He's like, these women are just screaming at each other.
Right.
And at the time I was like, it at least makes me feel better that I'm not there. But then I realized over time, it's actually detrimental to how I feel.
Right.
And it's something like in a relationship, when you're arguing, for every one insult, you need to give them at least 10 compliments, because otherwise at the end of the argument, they're going to perceive it all as, or a debate, let's say, or a disagreement as a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so knowing that it's 10 to 1, Gammy, that's insane.
Right.
So I love the idea of being aware of your surroundings. What are you watching? Who are you around? Like, who are your friends? Who are your work colleagues? And I actually think there was even a study in business where they said somebody who's positive and productive will elevate you 15%.
Yeah.
Someone that's negative and not productive will actually reduce your productivity by 30%. So the fact that the negativity can be way more impactful than the positive means that we even have to be even more aware of what's around us.
Right. And, you know, and I know this is not everybody's experience. So, addiction is not everybody's experience, but I never want to go back to that. Right. I never want to go back to that life. So, I remember that. You know, I remember what that was like. And so I will do whatever is necessary to stay on the trajectory path that I'm on, you know, to stay clean and sober. I don't want to go back to that life. So I just think having lived that and conquered it, and recognizing that addiction is not something that you are ever totally free from, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, I always have to be cognizant of who I am and protect that. So I don't ever want to fall back into that victimization and negativity and, oh, woe is me, because I lived in that. I lived in that for a long time, and that was my excuse. You know.
Do you hold on to the story a little so that you don't go back?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Those who forget are doomed to repeat. But like, is that in life? And it damn sure is that in addiction. I'm not trying to forget that.
Gammy, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Your insights, your evolution, your no BS, your transparency, your honesty, I really think is going to help some people change their life.
I hope so. I hope so.
And the fact that, girl, I can't believe you're freaking 70. And look, yes, genetically, you look amazing. But I actually mean that way beyond. Your spirit, your energy, your vibe, the way you look at life is just so freaking beautiful. And I really hope that people can, you know, after watching you, actually believe that they're never too old. They can do anything they want if they set their mind to it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So where can people find you and all the amazing things that you're doing? Your Instagram's awesome.
Yeah, my Instagram is at Gammy Norris. And then I'm on Facebook at Adrienne Banfield Norris.
If you want to learn how to go from abused, broken, and lost to successful, confident, and freaking badass, then keep watching.
I always considered myself as the main character of the movie, right? So my entire life is the movie set, and the movie is happening in front of other people's eyes, and it's playing in the theater. And we know that when the movie starts, we are met with the character and then stuff starts happening to the character, right? They go left, they go right, they win, they lose. And like as a spectator, sometimes the audience, which is like, don't go there, you're gonna fall. Don't do this, it's scary, it's dangerous. But as a character, we may not necessarily know that, right? So we need to experience that. So I always thought of my life being a movie and as a character who is on a journey to become a hero has to go through the ups and downs, has to go through the roller coaster of life. But at the end, I will win because I am a hero in the making. So every time I would fall, I would think it's like, okay, it's just a stumble. I just stumbled on the bottom of that roller coaster of life. I need to get up because I am a hero. And what you feed your mind with is so important. It's just so pivotal. You know, garbage in, garbage out. So if you are listening to something meaningless or people complaining or the horror stories on TV or whatever, it's just not productive information. It's not the information that is going to feed you positive thoughts or positive ideas or explore opportunities, none of those things. So you need to be very mindful. And again, I'm just saying from my experience, you guys need to do whatever you feel is best. Like what I did for me and what helped me is to control what I'm absorbing as an information because, you know, through my marriage, right? Like you bad mother, you bad businesswoman, you bad this, you bad that. That information was a bad information that I allowed into my brain. So I need to stop that information and replace it with something good. So I started listening to Tony Robbins. I started listening to Bob Proctor. Few years prior, I discovered our good friend Lisa Nichols, who watched The Secret, and I just started following her around and see what's happening. And all the amazing thought leaders, that's what I started feeding my brain with. And that helped me to kind of like rebuild that belief step by step. And then I started taking some actions. And then I was like, oh, I guess I'm not that bad. Oh, I guess I can do this. Oh, I guess I'm a good mother. Oh, I guess. And all those little steps started building that empire of confidence and belief in me.
That empire of confidence, that's amazing. Thank you for taking me through those steps because there's a difference. And I say this all the time, there's such a massive difference between believing and actually doing. Right. And so you can believe all you want. You can listen to the empowering, motivational, inspirational speeches and stuff like that. But when you find yourself in those moments where you don't necessarily believe in yourself, where you have that person repeating to you that you're no good, having those tactics to actually get out is so imperative. And I love what you say about the 5 people. It's so true. Just another, reason 1,262 of why I love being around you is because I get influenced by you. So for me, surrounding myself by inspiring women empowers me. And then I actually heard you say, I've never heard this, I love this, where you were like, I actually seek to be at the bottom of my group of 5.
Yep.
Explain that to me. And this is just one more example of how people can see that you can go from feeling terrible about yourself, not having any esteem, looking in the mirror and being disgusted with yourself, to this.
I think that, first of all, there is what it's called law of average. And I heard it for the first time from my husband, Eric. Basically, you are the average of 5 people you're spending most of your time with, right? Because if you really think about it, like who are your friends, who is your surrounding, who is your circle of influence, you, at the end of the day, you eat what they eat, you read what they read, you watch what they watch, you listen what they listen. And if you compare your income level, you are probably somewhere in the middle of that 5, right? Because you are on the same wave, you're thinking same things, you're dreaming similar things, you're doing similar things, right? So you're on that bubble of average. And a lot of people think it's like, oh, it's so awesome to be the top of the 5 because now I'm the coolest. And here's the thing, the top of the 5 gonna feed your ego, right? It's like, yeah, look at me, I'm the most influential, I'm the most powerful, look at me, it's cool to be me. But at the end of the day, it's not, to me, it's the most horrible position to be in. I am always seeking to be the dumbest person in the room because guess what? What's the law of average is, right? If you are the top, the bottom of that 5 will pull you down. But if you want to increase your average, if you want to become a little bit better, if you want to become a little bit more powerful, a little bit more influential, a little bit more impactful, then you would want to be at the bottom so that average can pull you up. So that's why I'm always trying to, like I said, find a seat at the table, because there are a lot of very powerful tables that we might want to sit in, but as far as I know, there are only 2 ways to get the seat at the better table. You either need to earn your way into it through your experiences, through your mistakes and your failures and overcoming all the different challenges, you earn your position as equal at that table, right? Or you can buy your seat at the table by buying somebody's courses, buying somebody's books, attending their events, buying their wisdom, hiring coaches, and things like that. That's why for me, I was at that time when I was growing my confidence, I was buying that confidence. I was buying a different mindset. I was buying my seat at a better table in everywhere I could to learn from these amazing, powerful people, right? So eventually I can earn my way into the better table.
Dude, I love this so much. When I heard you say it, I was like, I'm so going to do that from now on. I don't think about it, but the instinctualness of the ego thing, people being around people to make themselves feel better. I get it. When you've got low self-esteem, you're sometimes grasping at straws, right? And you're just like, I just need something to make myself feel better right now. And so, kind of going to the group of friends that are going to make you feel good, no matter what that looks like, is the natural inclination. So the idea of being around people and deliberately making sure you're not at the top of the list is beautiful. I want people to write that down right now. But how did you start to do that and not feel badly about yourself? Because it's very real, maybe you haven't had this, the imposter syndrome. Who do you think you are sitting at this table, right? Even if you buy yourself, right, by hiring coaches and things like that. The internal dialogue of, am I good enough? Do I deserve to be here? Did you have that internal dialogue? And if so, how did you get over it?
I had the internal dialogue like this, like, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Right, to be at this table. But at the same time, I start looking at certain things. Oh, I guess I did this and that was good. And I guess I did this and that was good. And I am deserving. The self-worthiness is probably one of the it's kind of like we don't pay enough attention to it, and we don't understand how damaging the low self-esteem can be, and how misleading, and how, just how many, you would be stunned how many successful people have very big issues with self-worthiness, with imposter syndrome and everything else. Like my husband and I, we train a lot of people who make 7 figures a year or more, and every single time, and nobody says like, oh, I have low self-esteem, that I have this or I have that. They're always like, oh, I don't know how to do this, or I don't have enough people to talk to, or I don't know how to grow my business. Not realizing that those are just the results of the low self-esteem, because they're limiting their belief about themselves, and because of that they're either dismissing the opportunities, or they're not moving forward, or they're not becoming more successful, different things like that. So constantly reminding yourself that you're smart, you're good, you're powerful, you're strong, kind of like building that affirmational belief in you. Just like on the opposite side, the bad stuff can damage everything. Just reminding yourself that, yeah, look at what I've already accomplished. Because awareness is another big thing to recognize, like, what am I good at and what am I not good at? And surrounding yourself with people who are better at other things that are important to you. Just like my husband and I, the way we work is, he has so many amazing skills and talents, and I am not necessarily or I'm not at all frustrated or worried that I'm not as good as him in particular areas, because he's an amazing speaker, he's an amazing trainer. I'll probably never be as good of a speaker as he is, but at the same time, I recognize that I have my own good qualities. I have my own strengths and I have my own talents that if we combine those two together, instead of comparing or competing, we combining those together and now it makes something more powerful. That's why we call ourselves two-headed monster, because together we can do so many amazing things that we can do by ourselves.
That's so powerful. And the worthiness piece is exactly how I feel, girl, which is why I started this whole episode on your past relationship, right? The empire that you built, I didn't even start there, because to the point of if you don't feel worthy, period. If you don't feel worthy, you're not getting up and going after that dream. And so how do we allow people or give people the tactics and tips to feel worthy so they can freaking go on their dream, leave that toxic relationship, start that business, have the family they've always desired, whatever that freaking dream is? Why don't we go for it? Because I think a big part of it is we don't feel worthy to have the dream in the first place. In fact, as you were laying it out, understanding why you and Eric work so well is because you both have found your own worthiness within that relationship. And so when you find these relationships where either you're bringing the same thing to the table or someone's dismissing what you believe is worthy, now you don't feel worthy, right? So you even said he's the two-headed monster, right? He's got his skills. He's so freaking amazing. I mean, one of the biggest, most impressive speakers in the world. And you're not competing with him.
Right.
You're complimenting him. And now you're able to feel your own worthiness even when you're with a really powerful man. And I'm actually glad that we're talking about this, because I get asked this question a lot as well. When you're married to someone who's very strong-willed, right, like my husband and your husband, and we're still strong women, how the hell do we stand our ground? And then how do we have beautiful relationships? And I think it's just that. It's finding our own worthiness, building our confidence in isolation, not with our partner, but in isolation, and then having the confidence in the relationship and finding the worthiness in the relationship so that you can both thrive.
Right. And also understanding that we are responsible for our own emotions and our experiences through life, right? Nobody can make you happy. Nobody can make me happy. So I think the biggest challenge comes in when we give away that power to somebody else to make us happy. So I remember you in your book, and we talked about it, and you told me that story as well, when you had your issues with your stomach and you were laying on the floor and you were trying to call Tom for him to come and rescue you, and then you realized that you don't need Tom to rescue you, you can rescue yourself, right? That is such a powerful distinction, and we often forget about it. We often give the keys to the kingdom to somebody else, keys to our happiness, keys to our success, keys to our self-worthiness, keys to our confidence to somebody else, thinking that they can make us happy, thinking that they can make us successful. Nobody can make you successful. We can give you all the books, all the scripts, all the knowledge, but I cannot drag you through the finish line. I can give you the knowledge and you can take it or not. And same thing with happiness. So same thing in marriage. And for us, I think recognizing, first of all, that I need to bring my best version to this marriage. And he needs to bring his best version to this marriage, because I cannot make him happy. I can bring joy into his life. I can bring love. But at the same time, it's also how often you see when you give people love, you give people attention, but they're not happy, they're not satisfied, because your way of giving love is not necessarily their way of receiving love, right? That's why the book 5 Love Languages is so big, because people kind of speak different languages trying to explain to each other that they love each other, and they don't get it, because their expectation of what love should be given in a way is different than the way they receive it. So respect is one of the big key factors in any relationship, business or personal, it doesn't matter, because if there is no respect, I think it's eventually that relationship gonna cease to exist, because we all gonna have differences. We all gonna have different opinions. Like my husband and I could not be more polar opposite in a lot of different ways, specifically from my upbringing, right? I grew up in a communist country. He grew up in a capitalism, right? He grew up in the church family, and I grew up in a communist environment when the church was and religion was prohibited completely. You know, so now we mix together, and we kind of like, there's a lot of stuff we need to talk about, right? There is a lot of things that are not normal to me or unusual to me. Same thing for him, right? So we have to communicate that. But if we're not communicating that with the respect, then it turns into the fights, then it turns into drama, then people cannot hear each other, then people cannot get to the core of the problem. So if you cannot communicate to get to the core of what is bothering you, to get to the core and to build that relationship of trust, to that foundation of trust, that you feel okay to be vulnerable, that you feel okay to be yourself, and you feel okay to say, you know what, that bothers me, honey, that hurt my feelings. You know, you need to get to that safe place first, but you cannot get there if you're not communicating respectfully. You cannot build that trust.
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, how do you build trust after you've given trust over and it has been abused and it has been used against you? And I think it really goes back to the thing that you were saying about building your own confidence within yourself, because Eric seems like he's very confident. And so in you having your own confidence, I think it's not threatening. And so again, going to how do we women build our confidence, stay confident, and find partners that can help fan it, not smother it, because I think that's the difference. Because it's already hard, right? It's already bloody hard to be confident without anyone influencing you. So now imagine the person that you're living with, the one that you love the most, is either using that fan or that fan becomes the blanket. So I've heard you, like, you take so much freaking ownership. I've heard you say, if I want a freaking castle and I want a king, I have to be worthy of being a queen.
Yep.
Like, fuck yeah, girl. So how did you become a queen? Tell me a couple of the steps.
Well, first of all, is to remember when, I don't know about you, but when I was a little girl, and I feel like a lot of little girls, we think it's like, oh, I want a prince on a white horse, blue eyes, white hair, whatever, right? I want him strong, I want him powerful. But I feel like, maybe because we do not know better at that time, we're chasing wrong qualities in our man. And that's probably what I was chasing in my previous marriage, in my previous relationships. I did not realize that, you know, having confident, loving, and caring man is much more important than blue eyes and blonde hair, or the height or the weight or whatever, right? I read an article a long time ago, and it was just basically like a guy describing it like, hey, yes, I'm rich, I'm this, I'm that, whatever, and basically to women. Just explaining, like, I do not need a doll. I do not need a pretty doll that I can put on the shelf in my house and I can look at it all the time, because it's going to get boring. It's going to be exciting for a minute, and then it's going to get stale and it's going to get boring. I want a woman who is smart, intelligent, loving, caring, and all these different qualities. So it dawned on me like, okay, now I know what I do not want the relationship to look like, right? That's what I learned in my previous marriage. And I knew now what I'm looking for. And I realized like, okay, I guess that man who is confident, strong, and powerful, and successful, and loving, and caring, he's looking for that same type of woman. So in order for me to find or attract that kind of man, I need to become that woman first. So it was selfish. I was selfish, rebuilding myself too. So yes, I was doing it for my kids, and yes, I was doing it because I couldn't live like this anymore, but I also was selfishly looking for that kind of a man, and I needed to become that kind of a woman first. So I had to build that confidence. I had to realize, you know, what that relationship gonna look like. And our relationship, we started with work. You know, it was because he had his own habits that he brought from his previous relationship. I had my own old habits or triggers, or what we call psychic damage, that we brought both from our previous relationships. And oftentimes he would close up or I would close up, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to talk about it. Like, especially as women, we're like, oh, I'm fine. Remember that crazy phrase? So guys, if a woman tells you I'm fine,
It means that she's not fine at all.
She's not fine. There is something wrong with that. So Eric was smart to kind of like push back on that and say, no, baby, I know you much more than you give me credit for. Talk to me. Because this is what happens in the relationships often enough, that, you know, because we do not either want to go into the depth because we don't feel like it, or we're not in the mood, or we are worried what's going to come out of this, right? So we're not pushing our partner to open up, or we're not creating that safe space so they're comfortable to open up, right? And in this way, it's easier to close up, especially if in your previous marriage or your previous relationship, you were punished for telling the truth, or it would turn into the fight, right? It's like how often, and I think we're all guilty of that, when the fight starts about something super silly, all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, we're screaming and yelling bloody murder about something that has nothing to do with who's taking the garbage out, right? And we're already talking about the generations and money mismanagement, and somebody looked at somebody weird, all kinds of nonsense comes out. But that was just a trigger. So what happens is and Eric actually taught me that analogy, and it was so visual and so helpful for me. Imagine spouses are like two hands, right? You're one and Tom is another one, or Eric and me, one in the other hand. And when we have some misunderstanding, or we have some miscommunication, or somebody offended somebody, even unintentionally, right? There's a small layer of a duct tape that goes around their hands. And because it's one, you can still break your hands. You can still kind of move them around. But then somebody said something else, or somebody offended you, or somebody said something mean to you, or somebody threatened your feelings, or whatever it might happen, another layer and another layer and another layer of duct tape goes around your hands, and now you cannot break them. Now you cannot see clearly. Now you cannot get to the bottom of that problem. So that's why understanding this concept, for me, him and I will always talk about this. Babe, this bothers me. Let's have a conversation right now. I know you guys have a day of the week, right? When you guys do that. I'm not that patient. I cannot wait. I'm just I have to solve this this second, right now. And so we kind of talk about it, and we're okay, I get your point, you get my point, and sometimes there is a negotiation that happens in the process because you might want to defend your position, but you also need to listen and understand your spouse or your partner position. And that's what happens. So we communicate with respect. And once you make it a habit, you don't have to wait for the duct tape to build up and build up and build up. Because what happens is it's just like that little snowball. You kick it from the top of the mountain. By the time it gets to the bottom, it's an avalanche. Right? That's what a lot of relationships do have. And that's why we see so many divorces, especially when kids get out of the house, they go to colleges, parents separate because they were trying to hold this craziness together for kids, but now they have nothing to talk about it. They grew apart so much. We either grow together as a couple or we grow apart. So the moment you start feeling that you're growing apart, try to do everything in your power to bring it back together. What are our common dreams? What are our hopes? What drives us? What are passions that we have? What are habits that we want to create, or whatever it might be? So constantly keep bringing you and your spouse on the same page so you can grow together. And that's why for me that was so helpful in my conversations with Eric, recognizing that if we do not talk about this, if we do not get to the bottom, if we do not clean the foundation for our empire to be built on, then we won't be able to build that empire because it's going to collapse like a courthouse.
Oh, dude, you're talking about momentum, right? And I think that that's so damn powerful, because if you're butting heads and you don't address it, that momentum is going to continue. And then to your point of it's a snowball effect, that it just keeps going. And I've heard you talk, actually, I think it was more about business, and I use the same philosophy, but the positive versus the negative momentum, and how, depending on, it can either be good or bad. So talk to me about how you've actually used that, especially the positive momentum, because I think the negative momentum you've just very eloquently laid out. Explain to me how we can actually use the positive momentum to create either a great relationship or something in business, something successful in business.
Once you recognize that, once you're aware that you are in a positive momentum, you just need to double down on that, right? And continue to build on and continue to build on. I'll give you, it's probably not going to be quite the answer that you're looking for, but inside of our business, we have what we call 90-day game plan. And that basically means whatever your goal is, you're trying to put massive momentum, massive activity into that short period of time, right? If you're in a recruiting business, then you just basically, that's all you do. You're all in, you're making calls, you're making sales, you're making whatever it needs to be in your business, right? So you can build a customer base, so you can build a prospect base, whatever it is, right? And it's gonna be hard, but it's going to be for a season. It's not going to be forever. This is when you build that foundation that you can later grow, right? That's when like burst of activity is something that is very similar to all the athletes, you know, like all the football players, right? They're not working 24/7 every single day of the year, but they're working their butts off in preseason to get in shape for the season. They're working their butts off during the season, and the postseason, they take a little break, they take a little time off so they can recover their bodies and start the season strong again. So it might be more than 90 days for them, but 90 days is a pretty good concept. And what is interesting, when you make a decision, the universe starts testing you. When you make a decision to change your life or to do something special or start that new project that you always dreamed of or start chasing your goals and dreams, the universe gonna see if you're for real or if you're full of shit. And it's just gonna say like, okay, let me throw a little wrinkle in here. Let me throw a little obstacle here. Let me do a little something. And if you back off, then you pretty much lose, right? But if you are strong and confident and determined to do something special, then you keep moving through all the different challenges. You keep moving through obstacles, and you can eventually achieve those goals and dreams. But you have to withstand that wind, right? That is pushing your sail in the wrong direction because you think that you put the sail up. It's not just putting the sail up. It's about catching the wind, because if wind blows into your face, it's hard to move forward. So you need to recognize when the wind is blowing, and you need to recognize how to adjust your sail. So for me, it's recognizing that every time I start something different or I start a new project, that's going to be a test time, and it's going to be scary, and it's going to be frustrating, and it's going to be, you know, challenging at times. But remember, you mentioned something earlier, talking about people that are not achieving their dreams and not because of the self-esteem. I think it's not just self-esteem. I saw one statistic a while back, and it impacted me in such a powerful way. It says 98% of people die without fulfilling their dreams. 98% of people. And you know the reason why? Because they're afraid to fail. So 98% of the population is afraid of failing, not recognizing that the failure is part of the success. And I think it's one of the challenges that we see right now a lot on social media. People are like, oh, look at my, lifestyle. Look at me, glitz and glamour. Look at my Rolls Royce. Look at my private jet. Look at this, look at that. Not necessarily saying like, this is the struggle that I had to go through to get to that Rolls Royce. These are the mistakes that I've made. This is how many times I've failed my face on the floor or on the concrete. This is how many times I had to scrape my shadow out of that road, to get to that new height, to rebuild my belief, to rebuild my confidence, and to build the life of my dreams. So we're not telling enough of these kind of stories. We're only kind of like, waving that, fuchsia flag, like, hey, this is the celebration. But how we got there, all the struggle, so at least we can understand that that's okay to fail. You only fail when you quit, when you stop trying. That's the only way when you fail. But if you keep moving forward one step at a time, if you keep pushing forward one step at a time, if you keep facing your fears one fear at a time, you will get there. You will absolutely get there. Just don't stop, because most of the times your breakthrough is right around the corner. Your something the universe gonna pull back from pushing you in a day, in a second, in a moment, in a month. But we do not feel that there is that breathing room. There is that light at the end of the tunnel. And I remember there was one period of time when I couldn't breathe because I couldn't bring my son to United States. So I moved to States, and I separated with my husband at the time. And I was, for 3 years, I was going back and forth every 2 weeks between the United States and Ukraine. And that was the time that I couldn't afford. I was buying the cheapest airline ticket possible with so many connections that I don't even know how many. It was long journey every 2 weeks.
And you hate flying. You have a fear of flying.
And I have a fear of flying. So I had to suck it up, like always. But, that was a tough time in my life because it was not just because it was hard on my body, right? Because it was 24-hour door-to-door journey. So I had to take 3 planes, and then I had to drive myself for 4 hours. I would leave the car at the airport. So that was not the hardest part. Not having the money to buy the tickets and trying to figure it out, it was not the hardest part either. The hardest part was me constantly missing one of my men. I was either missing my son or I was missing my husband. And recognizing that at some point I couldn't breathe. But Eric kept reminding me, it's like, babe, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Just breathe. Just take one day at a time. We're gonna find a solution. We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna solve this problem. Because to me at that time, that was a problem that I absolutely must solve. There is no scenario when this problem is not solved, period. Because I cannot live without these 2 men, and I need to bring them together. So whatever heaven and earth I need to move to bring them together, I'm gonna move. But it's tough in the process. It's even emotional for me to tell this story right now. But it was so hard to live in that moment. But for everybody who's watching, or if you're going through a tough time in your life, just know there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Just like we just finished winter and we're in the spring season, after every winter, spring is coming. Just like clock, every year. If you're questioning and wondering, spring is coming. It might be gloomy, it might be rainy, it might be snowing once in a while, but spring is coming. So whatever season in your life you're going through, just know it's not going to be forever. You're eventually gonna go through it. So it's important for us to recognize that and toughen it up, get a little patience, and recognize that we can find that final destination. We can get there as long as your reasons are strong enough.
Oh yeah, your why, 100%. And I didn't want to interrupt you, but dude, you know how powerful it was to watch you go, yeah, just had to suck it up, as always. Like, that's the mentality that I'm trying to adopt, trying to help share, because it's not that you don't feel, right? It's not, you have one of the biggest hearts I've ever seen. Like we've obviously had a lot of private conversations, and you have a massive heart. So it doesn't mean that you don't feel, it doesn't mean that you don't have these emotions, it doesn't mean that you are abnormal, right? In fact, you're absolutely normal, just like all the other women.
Yep.
And yet you can sit here and emotionally soothe and then say, I gotta suck it up. And this is the point, like I never want to trigger people. I'm never trying to dismiss people's experiences. But anytime I think about why we women don't live the life we want, and it's because we get trapped, we get tripped up, and then how do we handle it? And I think staying on the floor is not the fucking answer. Getting back up is. Now, I say that with so much compassion and so much fucking love and heart to anyone that's listening. But at some point, I do just say to myself, Lisa, you just have to fucking suck it up.
Yep.
And then also, the things that you do behind the scenes, I've heard you really talk about this. So everything that we've spoken about is how do you show up? How do you present yourself? How do you think? But I've heard you say the thing that really does separate, you said in it was more about business, but I think of it as life, right? The leaders and the amateurs is what you do when you're by yourself.
Yep.
Your habits. So talk to me about what habits you've adopted that have enabled you to go from insecure, really feeling badly about yourself, to a fucking badass.
I'm determined to do something different. I'm determined to show my kids what's possible. I'm determined to show my community of women what's possible. I'm determined to, instill that passion into another woman or another man and the belief in themselves. I think that you ask why as women we're not chasing our dreams, because the biggest, at least the answer that I found for myself is we don't believe that we're capable. We don't think we're worthy, right? So once we get to that higher level, we start sabotaging our own success. So for me, the different habits that I have that help me is the most important part. I think that I'm an inner-driven person. And let me explain what that means. It's what do you do when nobody's watching, right? When I have beautiful home, I have my gym in the house, and I have trainers coming every day at 9 a.m. And sometimes they travel, sometimes I travel, and they're not there. And I'm not always there in the gym. If they're not there, don't get me wrong. I'm just like, maybe I'm just gonna take another nap and I'm sleep a little longer. But most of the times I was like, you know what? I know you're not feeling it, but it's good for you. Go get your ass in the gym, go jump on that bike, or go push some weights and go get it done. So I can, sometimes we often say, it's like, oh, we're so bad at selling. We're bad salespeople. I think if we ask right now, everybody in the audience, the hands would go up. It's like, I'm a bad salesperson. And I want to challenge that because we're so good. We can sell ourselves anything we want to sell. I can sell to myself that I need to lay in bed a little longer. I can sell to myself that I need to eat a little that extra fat steak because it's so juicy and it's so good. I can sell to myself everything I want to sell to myself. But I also need to recognize that, okay, there is another side of me, salesperson, who needs to push back because in every conversation, somebody's selling, somebody's buying. Just like we're selling to our kids, eat your vegetables, do your homework. And they're selling back to us why they shouldn't, right? And why it's not important, and why they didn't want to brush their teeth because that's fine, right? So somebody's constantly selling and somebody's buying. So that conversation inside of our heads, that seller buyer conversation, it just whoever wins that day. One day's, yay, Marina, powerful wins, and sometimes the lazy ass Marina wins. So there are different days. But I think that for me, what helps me tremendously, because I'm inner driven, because I have big goals, because I have big dreams, I push through the inconvenience. I push through me not feeling it, doing it. I push through the fear. I push through those things because that cherry at the end is more important to me. That goal at the end is more important to me. You know, so that's what drives me. Most of the times when we are outer-driven people, we need that stick. You know, we are driven either by carrot or by stick. You either need somebody to tell you, hey, you're going to get fired. If you don't show up at work, if you don't perform, you're going to get fired. Or it's like, hey, there is a promotion, there is a little extra money coming in on the table. So we are conditioned since we were little kids to be outer-driven people. We conditioned to be told what to do. We conditioned since a young age, since kindergarten, do this, don't do that. Even we as parents, that's what we do. Don't touch this, don't do this, don't go there. Be careful. I'm guilty of that too. I do that to my kids as well. I'm trying to recognize that sometimes that's not healthy. I understand worrying about my kids and, you know, making sure they're safe is, yes, that's good and it's necessary, but at the same time, they need to learn on their own. How many times as a kid you were told, don't touch that candle, you're going to burn your hand?
Yeah.
And you still did touch it, right?
Until it hurt, yeah.
Did it hurt? Yes, it did hurt. But like you had to learn it for yourself because here's the truth. I cannot teach you how not to make mistakes. We all need to make our own mistakes. I can potentially, and as a parent, I think our biggest responsibility is to allow our kids to do small mistakes so they can learn for themselves that hopefully will prevent them from making big mistakes. But they have to learn through experiences. You can read every book on success, you can go through every course or every seminar. It's not going to make you successful because you need to try through the trial and error and success and mistakes and failures and victories. You have to be in the mix and try and see what works, what doesn't work in business, in relationship, in parenting, in health, in everything. Trial and error, that's what works. So for me, I find things that work for me. I recognize that I do not want to be outer-driven person. I do not want to be told what to do. I'm really bad at buying rules. If they're not my rules, sorry, that's not going to work. But understanding that sooner we become inner-driven, better it's going to be for our future, because we're going to be able to push ourselves or sell ourselves the vision or the hope or the belief or the courage necessary to get to our final destination.
Dude, I'm obsessed with this whole salesperson thing. It's so genius. And I'm always trying to think about how could I actually do that on a day-to-day. I think I would sit there and go, what do I actually sell myself on? Because to your point, I think you said it earlier, like we're not actually sometimes aware that we're necessarily doing it, because we're almost like convincing ourselves why we're doing it. So what are we selling? Okay, I'm selling myself that I'm not good at this, that I should do this, that I shouldn't do that. I think it's so genius. And then go, well, what would the opposite salesman do? Like, how would I almost like reverse my pitch, right? Because the salesman has a pitch. So the pitch is, you're going to feel so good if you just snooze that alarm. Think about how cozy this bed is, right? That's the salesperson trying to keep you in bed. And then the other, I would then counteract it and go, okay, to get me out of bed, I'd be like, just think about those arms, Lisa, your muscly defined arms, how sexy they're going to be, right? And so I'm like in real time, actually, becoming my own salesperson. But it's so powerful. I love it.
But I mean, to me, like, I love awareness. Awareness is probably my most favorite word recently, because once you're aware of the situation, of the weakness, of the challenge, of the problem, that's when you can solve it, because you cannot solve the problem you don't know you haven't. So for me, recognizing like, oh, these are my weaknesses. Oh, great. Thank you for pointing it out, because now I can work and I can fix them. And, oh, this is the problem. Oh, thank you for letting me know, because I did not know exists. Now I can go and solve that problem. So recognizing that, having, first of all, awareness of who we are, what do we do, what's happening in our life, what's good, what's bad, what we can control, let go of what we can't control, and improve the things that we want to improve, and hire help where we need help and we do not want to necessarily do those tasks. So for me, more I'm becoming aware of where I am and what's happening and how I can improve. It just helps me to grow faster.
How though, as a control freak, do you let go of control?
That's the toughest one.
I know. That's why I asked you, homie.
That's the toughest one. And that's actually, I think that's the reason why I'm afraid of flying. Not by any means that I'm pilot or I know how to fly the airplane. Oh, God, no. But I just, I don't know. I think it's that whatever crazy thought that I can probably do it better, you know?
Okay, but actually take me through this, because I'm laughing, but there's real like trauma around flying. Like I don't want to dismiss that, and you know there is real fear. So how do you, and like actually take me through real time how you, whether it's flying or anything else, how do you work through that control element? Like what do you tell yourself to let go as you're like white knuckling it on the plane, right? Like, and again, just whether it's fear in general or specifically the plane, what is that sequence of events that happens in your brain that allows a control freak to let go of control?
Well, that's interesting, because it's not necessarily letting go of control. It's a little bit like surrendering, you know, because I recognize that pilots are trained specifically to do this job, and they're way better than I am, because I have no freaking clue how to fly an airplane. So they're gonna do a way better job than I ever could, right? So that's the first thought.
Like logistics, like
just
actually
logistic,
go down to the
I'm
ground
very
facts.
logical, yeah. So I'm kind of like explaining to myself,
Love
I'm
that.
negotiating with myself.
Okay.
See, I'm selling to myself the story that they're better pilots, right?
Perfect, okay.
And that's what helps me through a lot of my fears, is to understand that the why, the mission behind it, the vision behind it is much more important than my fear. So for me, flying would stand in my way to either see my kids or to travel the world, because one of my definition of happiness is to see the beauty of this world with my own eyes and share it with people I do love and care about, and doing it in style. So traveling and flying would get me to those places faster. But even more importantly, I want to contribute to as many women as I possibly can. I want to build that confidence. I want to build that belief in them. And oftentimes it takes me to be in their space. It takes me to be at the event, to be at that venue, so I can present or I can talk or I can be in that mastermind and small group, whatever it is, right? So my mission is bigger than my fear. And every time I'm thinking like, will I allow my fear to win because I'm a sucky loser? I do not want to lose even to myself. So I'll push myself because I will not allow that fear to control me. So
it's essentially a way of controlling it.
yeah, so it is actually a way of controlling it. So I'm not really letting go of the control. I am actually taking charge and I'm taking controlling the fear.
That's amazing. But here's the funny thing. I think you're absolutely spot on. It's like, because when I asked the question, I actually meant it because I'm a bit of a control freak as well. And a lot of us, joke about it. But as it can really become detrimental to our dreams. And that's why it was like, how do you process it? And even if it's, you just have to control the fear, and if that means you have to logically walk your way through it and come up with the conclusion that, you can't actually fly a plane better than a pilot.
Right.
It allows you to then really take that step forward, because again, that's just what I'm trying to think about. What holds us back from taking that freaking step forward, leap forward? And it's the big thing about fear. And I actually heard you say, which is so genius, it's like, it's not really like the fear of getting on stage, right? It's not necessarily getting on stage and being in front of the people. It's the unknown.
Yes, the fear unknown is, in my opinion, is the biggest fear by far in the world, because right now the highest ranked fear is the fear of public speaking. 61% of the population is petrified of public speaking, me included. But I never saw anybody rank the fear of unknown. But to me, it's probably the highest fear out there, because the uncertainty, the insecurity, the unknown is the worst, right? What we've seen through all the challenging times through pandemic, we did not know what's going to happen tomorrow. We did not know what's going to happen with our health. We did not know what's going to happen with our jobs. We did not know what's going to happen with our securities, how we're going to pay our bills, how we're going to interact with people, how we're going to get together. None of those things. So a lot of those things were taken outside of our control. We were put into very unknown, insecure, uncomfortable situation, and we all had to cope with this. And that's why as soon as pandemic started, I started immediately recognizing that, yes, there's going to be a lot of lives lost because of the health challenges, and yes, there's going to be a lot of financial distress. But more than anything, I'm really worried about the mental instability for a lot of people, because you can only take so much stress as a human being. Eventually you're gonna break. So that's why even seeing the news and them constantly telling how many people would die that particular day, even kind of like not even having on the volume, just having the TV screen behind me, kind of like pushing into my subconscious brain, by noon, I would feel like such a big weight in my chest. And I was like, I can't breathe. And I felt all that negative information pushing me. So I recognize, first of all, I don't want to see it. I don't want to hear about it. I need to protect my mind from negative. I need to feed my mind with positive. I need to let go of things that I cannot control. I'm not a doctor. I'm sure all the smart doctors will figure it out. We have a lot of beautiful, amazing, talented people in this world. They'll come together. They will fix it. So letting go of control in a lot of ways is something that I had to learn, and recognizing that focus on what you can control and let go of the rest. This is probably the hardest thing for me to learn and to do in my work, in my relationships, in everything, because I want to control everything. But then I recognize I'm just one woman. I cannot do everything, right? I need to trust my team that they're going to do a good job, right? That's what they hired to do. That's where they bring those professional skill sets that I may not necessarily possess. So shame on me being so stupid and ego-driven, thinking that I can do better than them. So, okay, let them do their job. And at the same time, also recognizing I need to spend my time what I can do best, instead of just trying to do, folding the laundry and, running and filling the gas in my cars and doing all kinds of stuff that it's necessary, but somebody else can help me do that, while I can do only things that I can do, the talents and skills that I possess that somebody else doesn't. So I can be more productive with my time, so I can be more fulfilled, so I can actually move in direction of my passion and my mission instead of being lost and by trying to freak out about everything that is happening in the world that I absolutely have zero control over.
God, do you think that came from your childhood growing up in a communist country?
The controlness?
Yeah.
Possible. It can be, because we were like so controlled. It's just fascinating. But I do believe a lot of things come because the skill sets that I have and some of my strengths that I have as a thanks to the circumstances that I was raised in. Like, for example, problem solving. I think it's probably one of my highest skill set is to solve problems, right? And finding the solutions and being resourceful, because the way I was brought up and raised, I did not have a lot of resources. We would have, and that takes me way back in my childhood, it was like we would have huge empty shelves in the mall, and there would be one doll for all the girls with a couple different colors dresses, and there would be one truck for the boys, same truck. So at the birthday party, you would get 3, 5 dolls, however many kids you invited, and the same doll, or 5 trucks or whatever, exactly the same toy. But I would draw my own little games, like take a coin and write around the coin, and with a little cube, create my own little board game, right? Or I would cut out the doll out of the cardboard, and I would just draw little dresses and put some dresses on her. So I had to do something different, right? I had to be creative. I had to be resourceful. Even though I'm horrible at drawing, even though I'm horrible at those things, I did not use it as an excuse. I was like, oh, look at this. Nobody has this beautiful doll, just me, right? So finding ways to solve different circumstances, solve different problems, like our good friend Marie Forleo says, everything is figure-outable, right? Everything is figure-outable if you put your mind to it. So I'm absolutely grateful to all my life experiences because they made me who I am today. I would not change absolutely anything. Even my relationship, my abusive relationship, I would not change a single bit, because now I know what relationship should not look like. And because of that, I was able to find a man of my life, my life and love of my life, right? So all those experiences, regardless of how hard they might be, and especially if you, in the moment, you think like, why this is happening to me? Why me? God, why me? And in most cases, when you look back in time, 5 years later, 10 years later, that was the best thing that happened to you. That divorce, the best thing that happened to you. You lost that job, the best thing that happened to you, because later you said, you know what, enough is enough. I'm worthy, I'm capable, I can achieve way more than I was giving myself credit for. Let's go chase that dream. Let's go chase that relationship. Let's go chase that opportunity. But at some point, you need to get into the circumstance where your way is only forward and your back is against the wall. And sometimes somebody or something has to put us with our back towards the wall so we can only move forward. And we don't like it because nobody wants to be put with the back in the wall. But sometimes it's necessary, but time, in most cases, is the best thing that happened to us.
If you want to learn the love lessons that you wished you had known sooner, click here right now. Click.
Happiness that I wanted and the success and the prosperity that I wanted wasn't going to come from another person. It was going to come from me. And I wanted someone